Welcome back to The Broken Handled. Today we have a whole bunch of fantastic topics for you. We're going to be touching on an active recon playbook. What is OSINT? How to use an OSINT playbook. And then we're going to go to the mid-pivot and we're going to change it and start looking at the industry as a whole and kind of touch base.
The Broken Handle is for informational purposes only. Nothing here is legal, financial, or career advice.
We got some great feedback this week on episode 1, JB. What did you hear from the audience?
That their ears were burning and they didn't like us at all and they appreciate us to be quiet.
I don't know if that's what I got, but I would say we got some very good critiques in regards to us being us, from what I understand. Is that what you gathered?
Yeah, exactly. And that's the goal here. We're learning and I appreciate it. And let's see what we can do with this episode too and meet the needs.
Excellent. Well, as I said before, I'm sitting across from the digital table of my great comrade, JB. And today we're going to discuss a tactical playbook. It's taking control of your career using a framework most people never touch until it's too late. That process is called the job market OSINT.
Okay, can you explain what that is? I would have to be that guy because I don't know what that is. Sounds like a cybersecurity term or something along those lines. What is that?
I'll tell you what, it sounds way cooler than it actually is. What it stands for is open source intelligence. I can't leave my military roots behind. It's kind of bred into my DNA. But in this particular case, what it allows you to do is collect and analyze publicly available information. The military uses it to build personas on our opponents, and it allows them to basically identify what kind of tactics they'd use. So it really just gives you like a origin story to the people that you're dealing with on the other side of the tracks.
Okay, so this is from your military side, not really the cyber then.
No,
right?
This is straight military, but I will tell you, in the job market, it becomes extremely pivotal in how you attack, finding work, and then looking up companies and all that good stuff.
Okay, and we're not doing anything illegal, right? There's no hacking, there's not breaking into anything. This is just something that's out there publicly accessible.
Oh, no, absolutely. Yeah, nobody's going to jail over this. Correct. This is zero illegal, zero gray area. Every company has the infrastructure. They leave a footprint outside. They put out signals daily. Employees leave breadcrumbs everywhere. If you know how to read these, they become extremely valuable, especially when you're doing this in the job hunt. And why we bring it up here is because I feel like this is going to add an enormous value for our listener stuff.
All right. Appreciate that, because honestly, it sounds like a little bit of stalker stuff going on, a little creeper, but we don't want to do any of that shenanigans, right? So it's just all about preparation. Don't do the blast 50 applications and pray. You're going to show them what you have to do, what's already out there on that terrain for that company that you're profiling, essentially.
Exactly.
Okay.
Everybody, I'm assuming, I shouldn't say everybody, but I'm assuming that the majority of our audience knows what Glassdoor is. It's a site where you can go to gather information on specific employers, roles, interview questions, stuff like that. Now, one of the things that it's really well known for is its rating of companies. So as far as is it a great company to work for? Is it somewhere you want to go? And particularly if you're not familiar, what you would see is you would go out and you would see a company that has like a 3.8 rating out of 5. In the layman's mind, you're like, oh, that sounds like a pretty decent company to work for. That's a straight rookie mistake. These ratings are being manipulated by those companies. So if you see a 3.8, that means there's a lot of mixed messages going on in the back end, and you may want to steer clear of that company. I would say also that there's multiple other things within Glassdoor that you'd want to look at, but I would say don't get fooled by the ratings. Do your diligence and your research.
Okay. So those numbers are lies, which is unfortunate, and that's marketing 101, right?
I think lies is a strong term. I would say that they're probably manipulated or specifically encouraged.
They're massaged. They're massaged.
The numbers are massaged.
Apologize.
It's collective accounting, JB, if you will. They're coming up with creative ways to report. Let's just go with that. I don't want to call any companies liars.
All right, that's fair. My apologies for anybody who's offended.
One of the things that OSINT is very well known for is the ability to use what we call Google Dorking. What do you think about that, JB? Have you ever heard of this practice?
I mean, I've been called the dork, never heard of Google Dork. What is this?
Well, and I will say this for our audience that doesn't use computers or isn't aware of how to use the internet, that's fine. We're going to kind of break this out for you. Google Dork is using a search engine to basically look for principal words that are addressing a specific company or likeness of a company and practices that company does. So I'll give you an example of what a Google Dork would look like. In this particular case, what we're doing is we're going into Google, we're typing the word site, reddit.com, and then we're adding a job like a SOC analyst interview in quotations next to it. Now, what that allows you to do is see what specific people in Reddit are making comments about SOC analyst interviews, which could be extremely valuable in identifying those questions that might come forth if you are interviewing for a SOC analyst. Now, you can apply this principle across any board as far as like if you're a carpenter, a welder, whatever be the case. You can use any site name, so it doesn't have to be specifically Reddit. It could be Glassdoor, it could be Career Guider, it could be any of those jobs, Indeed, and you can just put that job. Have you ever used this, JB?
No, and that's what it's about to ask. I mean, this is literally just a query. You're not doing any plugins, anything like that Google has. This is just using the search bar, google.com.
No, absolutely. It's just going into, I use Google just because that's the one that I think the majority of our audience will use. But that's not to say that you can't go to other search engines and search these same specific. Now, in the actual handout that we're going to be giving out to people, our audience for this week, we have a breakout and it has some Google Dork identifiers that you can utilize. One of those is specifically, like I just said, talking about looking up a specific role and at a specific company using the word site and the company name and then the actual position. But you can also use this in other ways where you can look up specifically like you could use a site name and then SOC interview scenarios. So how are these teams interviewing? Do they have multiple people on the panel? What kind of questions they're asking? Do you think this would be valuable to our listeners, JB?
Yeah, and actually got my mind spinning right now, like in a good way, obviously not a bad way, but I'm seeing all this framework. I'm thinking, let's throw this into AI and let AI just triage all of that. No, I'm liking this. I'm going to do this on my own. I'm going to report next week on that, what I do and what that looks like from the user perspective. I've never done this before.
You know, that brings up a great point. Maybe they could just feed that directly into AI and see how it adjusts these queries as opposed to typing them in. Fantastic idea. I'm going to keep us back on track and kind of take us into a couple more other queries. When I was researching this, one that I thought was really awesome was another example would be like taking the word site, putting in the word : typing glassdoor.com, and then looking for specific a role name and then negative reviews. This one really unearthed a lot of great stuff. Things that you're like, you would never think about, but what you start to understand about specific sites like Glassdoor, even Reddit, what they do is a lot of these engineers will vet there because they're vetting anonymously, but they'll state the name of the company and their specific issues or concerns with those companies. So I think for me, this was hugely eye-opening because I was like looking and saying to myself, man, I see all these negative reviews from these engineers and the culture just looks like completely toxic at some of these IT companies. Do I even want to apply? What do you think, JB?
Kind of looking at it from a completely different spectrum. I'm looking at this as an opportunity. So if there's problems structurally with the company and you're your manager out there and you see that, why wouldn't you go to the next level up and say, hey, I see your problems. I can fix your problems in this manner, just like we talked about in the previous episode. Here's a problem. Here's how I'm going to solve it. That's how I'm looking at it right now. I'm using that as an opportunity to sell yourself instead of a negative.
No, I like that. I like that a lot too, because if you are running an IT group and you are at a major company, this would be a fantastic way to kind of gather if there's any discrepancies with your employees and how they feel about the specific culture that you're offering. So this is like a double-edged knife here. So you could get negatives in the negative way, and you can get the negative in that constructive criticism way. I think that's a great play, actually, JB. One of the other things that I did notice as well is that they have another Google Dork that you could look up artifacts, where it's like, again, putting in the site name, putting in the name of the role, and then looking for specific interview files. This one allows you to scrape the internet looking for specific PDFs or file types that they've put out to the community at large of questions that they were asked. So it gives you the actual document of some of the responses. Now, granted, I don't know how ethical this is one way or another, but I feel like if it's being provided and it hasn't been removed, then potentially if you can take it for what it's worth, and it can enrich your interview process, this could be extremely invaluable.
Yeah, that definitely sounds like it gives someone a lot more confidence, having at least an idea of the structure, like how many interview levels are going to go, potentially who they are going to be interviewing with, at what levels. It's going through the military term. It sounds like an after-action report. Mm-hmm. You're taking all that data that was reported and transposing that into something useful for you as a tactical approach.
I know we've touched on like Reddit and specifically Google, but like one of the other communities that I started to like really dig into and find here was GitHub. Actually, it's a huge wealth knowledge base. Now, granted, I know everybody knows and loves GitHub that use it, right? But for me, I'm not a programmer, so I don't post a lot of like projects out there. Do you find it that you were using it in your previous roles quite a bit, JB?
Not really in my roles at companies, and personally I have it just kind of learn and understand how those repos work and how they integrate, how you can do pipelines and push things from GitHub and actions and automate your systems. So that's just a personal aspect. I know that made it sound like I know what I'm talking about. I don't.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, that's the thing too, is like, I think in this particular case, this is they're breaking this out is like, if you were looking for SOC interview questions, you would use a fork and true. So the query that you would post in there would be SOC interview questions, fork:true. What this would allow you to pull back, and after running this a couple different times, I was able to pull out like repo mappings, specific projects that people were working on that fell under those roles, playbooks that the people within the company had already created, which was Jill in the Nile, because like these playbooks were extremely valuable, I think, because when I go to do my next role, or even in my previous roles, I've spent a great deal of time creating playbooks or instructions or SOPs on how to actually do the work. Now I can just take these playbooks and remodify them if I were to take a position at that company, and they've already organically built within the environment. One of the things that I saw in here as well was event triage questions. So if a major incident happened, regardless of whatever field you were in, they had playbooks on how to react, who to call, what steps to take, what industry standards there were. I found this extremely valuable. Have you ever had the opportunity to build out any kind of playbooks or had to do anything like that within your companies, JB?
Overall, I've done deployments, support tier 1, 2, 3 documentation on how they support the service. So those types of playbooks, step-by-steps, handing that off, getting the operational aspect off of my team's plate over to other teams that are available 24/7. So I'm familiar with all that.
This can be applied to any industry. Like you said, it's because every time I go to a position, I feel like one of the very first things that I ask when I get to that culture is, hey, what do you have documented? What is it been updated recently? And the answer is always no. We'd love to have documentation. We'd love to have everything codified, but you know what? That's why we hired you. And I'm like, well, I don't even know how to do the process. So how would I be able to write the process? Yeah. But then it's like, well, you're doing OJT. So we're not giving you any information on how to actually do the job. We're expecting you to come and run as soon as you get there and then codify everything. Have you had this experience?
A lot of places are not very good at maintaining documentation. It's something that just pushed to the wayside from the day to day. It happens. I wish there was a better way to do that. Coming in, having to develop that for someone, you always just have to fall back and rely on the frameworks that you know and have that as the foundation and the building blocks for what you're trying to achieve for that client.
I myself have found that one of my great strengths that I bring to most of the companies that I've worked for is my ability to codify things, but also to do the research to find out what they have. Mm-hmm. This is a great strength that is not mentioned in a lot of job requirements. I don't think a lot of people post, hey man, you're going to have to get to our place and then codify everything and then learn it at the same time. So you're basically building the plane as you're flying it kind of mentality. Do you find that you've seen this happen?
Yeah, I mean, just trying to think back. I'm not trying to throw anybody under the bus.
No, absolutely. You can act like it's an organic company that no one knows, but then when you explain it, everybody will. So either way, you can't win on.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm trying to be nice, but it's documentation. No one cares about it, just almost sadly. So coming in, there are frameworks, right? So one that I've been more exposed to is the Open Group architecture framework. That's repeatable patterns, things you can develop and work from. If you're really into it, you can get certified on it. So there's frameworks to follow through and help with that. And that's where I keep going back. If I don't know it, I'm going to fall back to something. Research what it is, your framework in your industry and that you're trying to help with. That data is out there. So that's easily available. So always leverage that as your starting point, even if you're just going in blind. It's just gives you that comfort level of saying, I know I got this in my pocket to start from. After that, it's you pick and choose what the client needs and what they're trying to achieve for their goal.
No, I think those are fantastic practices for everybody to utilize. I'm going to continue down these train tracks. I'm getting pushed to the little bit to the left and right, so we're going to keep this thing on the tracks. One of the last things that I wanted to touch on is how you can create an alert working with a broad string. And what this means is like you could create an alert that will identify specific roles that you're looking for, and then it'll also attach it to specific companies. So let's say that I want to be a security engineer for Amazon, or I want to be a cybersecurity analyst for CrowdStrike. What I can do is I can set up a dork, as we've been calling it on the show. We'll put in the site name, we'll put in Reddit, and then we'll put in the company name and the position. What this will allow you to do is create an alert. So if there's any chatter in these environments or even in these communities, it'll give you a heads up. Hey, there's a lot of chatter that's surrounding these positions. So to me, this is fantastic because now I can immediately go out to those companies' job boards and be like, are they posting this position now? So I'm ahead of the game before, or if they're not posting, I know that they're going to post. So I have my eyes on the prize and I'm waiting to pull the trigger so I can be one of the first people in the door to get those roles. I think one of the great parts about this specific query is that it allows you to be ahead of the game, way ahead of the game, and then you're expecting as opposed to being reactive when everybody else jumps on it, and now you're already 100 candidates deep and you can't get your resume in. Do you think this would be valuable to our audience?
I mean, that's kind of how we do this podcast. We have a pipeline. We ingest a lot of data for our articles and everything that we try to speak to. I'm all for it. So it's a great tool for people to have something like this.
So I'm going to summarize this section. We went over identifying interview scenarios by using Dorking. So what kind of scenarios you might potentially see based off of what engineers are reporting into their communities. We've also touched on picking up negative chatter specifically about roles within the company by using the site glassdoor.com company name and then the position. That'll allow you to get a better understanding of the culture. Then we went out and looked for specific interview questions that might be identified by using the Dork company name, SOC analyst, interview file type, :PDF. That'll give you that information. And lastly, one of the things I wanted to close out was looking for those job alerts. So identifying yourself to when potential positions might be posted by the employers you want to work for. Did I capture everything, JB? I know we went over a great deal of stuff. What do you think?
Sounds solid.
All right. Well, one of the things I wanted to bring up is the cert hypocrisy paradox. Have you heard about this at all?
I mean, the name helps me understand potentially what's going on, but I'd like to hear the story and see if it aligns to my experience.
Now, this is where people self-reject. So what I mean by that is they'll see a posting. It says like a CISSP or a CCNP, 10 years, build cloud blindfolded, be a project manager for 15 years, know how to use AI for the last 15 years. But when you start to take your OSINT lens and you point it at LinkedIn and you're looking at actually who's sitting in these seats, and this is where the hypocrisy really generates. You'll see like 9 times out of 10, the person that's sitting in the seat that is supposed to have all of these requirements they're expecting of you has like a security plus and it's been around, they haven't recertified since 2018. That's what I call hypocrisy. And I see this day in and day out. This is a complete double standard. And it's so frustrating for me searching in the job market where you're being rejected day in and day out. And then you see these individuals at these companies that have, not even a fifth of the certifications you have, any of your background, any of your education, but somehow they've been a security engineer at Google for the last 8 years, right?
So, all right, that does align with things I've seen. So they have this huge list for this job description. You have to be Superman, essentially, and put on your cape and fly around and make magic happen. It's like, absolutely right. I've seen these and I'm like, okay. And then I'm looking at my experience. I'm like, well, in some of these scenarios, I have that exact experience and some I don't. And there's other scenarios where I'm way overskilled. I'm in one of those interviews right now where I'm talking to someone and they're going through this interviews like, oh, you have to have this level. I'm like, I've answered everything so fast. This is, again, the cert hypocrisy. You're claiming I should have that, but I was able to answer your questions by not having one in hand.
You're exactly right. You want to say to these people, like, why don't your guys have this? If you expect this from me, and you can't. That's the unfortunate part because you're the one that wants the role, right? You can't go in there blasting people from the interview and say, well, this is complete hypocrisy because the people that you're interviewing with, you've looked them up on LinkedIn. And this is one of the things that we're going to touch on maybe a little bit later is you've done your research on the interviewers because you wanted to understand what their culture's like, what their background's like, so you could better bridge those gaps to those technical questions they might ask. And in doing so, what you find out is you look up their profiles and you're like, man, these people, like you're looking at their background, you're like, how did they ever get this position to begin with?
Yeah. I've seen that too. It's not too common, but it does exist where just someone's an outlier and you're like, wow, how do you have this job type thing? And sometimes they just have the credentials, they don't have the experience, or have the experience and they can't get in because they don't have the credentials, which I've seen some people that are amazing at their job in architecture and certain technologies. They want to fight the system and never get it, but they are highly successful and they're an outlier.
Well, and that's the thing too, is that you hear it time and time again. People are like, it's the 3-triangle paradigm, right? Experience, certification, and then having your education, right? So generally, in most cases, most people would say to you, as long as you have 2 out of the 3, you should be good to go. Well, what we're finding now is that in the job market currently is that even if you have 3 out of the 3, they want even more things. And then you look at the actual individuals that are holding those positions, they don't even have 1 of the 3. So you're almost in a place where you're like, man, this is so confusing. And I can't prove to you that I have the experience because you won't give me the job to show you.
Yeah.
So how do I sell myself in this particular case? And I know I'm coming off a little negative right now, and that's not my tone. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to embrace the frustrations of the people that are searching for these positions and let them know that I'm empathetic and I understand how frustrating it is. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it makes me circle back a little bit to the previous episode, and that's that shifting in the market, the shifting of job descriptions. The company's trying to be the first mover advantage by structuring in a certain manner for whatever's coming down the pipe in the future. So that's the frustrating part because we're still trying to catch up. We're like Barney and Fred out here with their feet and they're rolling around in high-speed F1 Formula cars and we can't keep up.
So it's like, how do you bridge that gap? And I think one of the things that I've read about how to deal with this in an interview process is not saying, hey, man, your guys have none of these qualifications. I see you're pushing toward automated cloud frameworks. It could be anything. It doesn't have to be cloud frameworks in this instance. I see that you want to update your existing infrastructure and get your employees aligned with where you want them to be. I think that would be a very good way to say, in this case, you're working towards something great. Let me help you achieve that, and let's get those certifications. Not to say that I'm not willing to do the work and I'm not willing to prove my worth, but I see that you want to make something great. Let me be a part of that. What do you think of that?
Yeah, and that's a great position to take if you don't have the cert. If you're fully unemployed, take an opportunity to find one key certification that is going to get you closer to obtaining that job you want. You're going to build that story up. So I did IBM skill build. It was AI, had to do a whole orchestration solution within their Watson X platform. And that's starting to come around and pay dividends a little bit for me because I'm getting some more looks because of the effort I put in. It was a 10-week program. It got piled on the top of my MBA, which was fun to deal with, but it's
you like to suffer is what you're trying to say. You hate your site.
Yeah, I'm a glutton for punishment, I guess. So that was one of those things. It's like I was able to do it. It struggled because the team fell apart. I had to do it all on my own, and I leveraged AI, but that's a whole different story. So
one of the sections that me and you have talked about previously to this episode was I feel like was salary. Right? Like, how do you recon salary? Now that we've gone through steps on how to collect the interview information, we've gone through steps on how to get a better understand the culture. The most important one, which I probably should have started with this one, to be honest with you, is salary, right? When you're talking to a recruiter, how do you define this, right? Without guessing. One of the biggest mistakes in negotiation is recruiters they'll ask you for a number. They'll be like, hey man, what's your minimum salary range? Like, why would you even start there? That's like saying to you, like, hey man, I know you want a Ferrari, but here's a Kia Soul. What do you think? And you're like, nah, man, that's the medium requirements of what I would expect. Now, granted, in this case, if you answer that question right out, you're basically giving them higher ground to navigate that, right? They're going to be able to identify whatever salary they want to offer you, as opposed to answering the question with, I can't answer that based off of, I need to better understand what the qualifications for this role would be. And I think that's a very responsible way to answer that. If you were hiring, would that be a good answer for you, JB?
Yeah, I've said things similar. So I want the total compensation, understand what is the salary range, are there RSUs, which is, I just drew a blank.
Restricted stock.
Thank you. Yep. See, other half, the other smart guy. So So yeah, restricted stock units. Do you pay for any of the benefits? Like, is there free medical? Like if you're looking at government, state, local, and anything like that, they're going to be a smaller range. But maybe they have a bonus. If it's another company that's just a growth phase and they're still starting out, maybe they have some of these benefits that they're offering you compared to other companies that help bridge that gap. So that's the whole thing. That's why you don't want to anchor somewhere until you know the full spectrum of what they're truly going to offer you.
No, it's fantastic input. I like that a lot. One of the things that I discovered when I was doing the research for this episode is there's a site you can go to look this stuff up. Now you're saying, well, yeah, there's always been sites. This is a completely new one to me, though. It's called H-1B salary data. Now I'm going to throw out some technical jargon about how this specifically works, but I think this is a fantastic tool to like help you leverage your compensation. Now, under federal law, any company sponsoring a visa has to file a labor condition application with the Department of Labor stating the exact salary, and it's public knowledge. Now, when I went out and did this, right, I went out to h1bdata.info. I typed in the employer, in this case it was Amazon. I typed in a title, which was a security engineer, and it popped out their exact amount of what they have reported to labor unions of how much they're paying for that salary. Now, how valuable do you think this would be at the negotiation table when I have a recruiter on the line?
Mind blowing. I didn't know about this. I mean, I'm seeing H-1B. That has to be something related to H-1B visas and all that, right? It seems directly correlated to that.
I think you're making that up, but I honestly don't know if there's a correlation. I could jump on that bandwagon, but honestly, I don't know.
I'll keep that one in my head. All right. All right, but that as being what it is, I'm mind blown actually. I was talking to Natalie, and for anybody who doesn't know who that is, that's my other half. And I was saying, there's no structure in IT in the pay ranges and the salaries that they do. It's all this smoke and mirrors to try to get landed where you really need to be. And there's no structured definition of the job roles, which you kind of touched on already. Mm-hmm. Healthcare, you're a trauma nurse, you're in oncology, many areas that they have, well, it's pretty standard. And we don't have that in the IT side. And knowing this is out there for us to leverage, to have that data going in, written down and memorized, saying, no, I know exactly where you're at before you even talk to you. Yep. The best negotiation tool you can ever have right there, to me, in my opinion.
Well, yeah, and it's crazy too, because like if a recruiter says their ceiling is like 110, but you see there's 3 filings for that position at 135, then you know what the actual hard ceiling is versus the invisible ceiling that they're trying to make you believe exists. I'll tell you what, I'm definitely looking forward to using this next time I have a recruiting call. I've always just gone out to Glassdoor, did a quick recon, collect OSINT on the positions. I did threw some stuff into Gemini to kind of see what the salaries were that people were reporting to better get an idea. But now that I know that there's actually a hard set without any feeling of deliberation or trying to make those decisions myself based off of my own knowledge is extremely helpful.
Very
now, in this week's episode, in the documentation that we're going to provide to you, it's going to explain this exact process and how you can search that. So again, we'll have the Google Dorking walkthrough, and then we're going to have a specific OSINT brief that's going to explain to you how to collect these H-1B1 data information. So I guess at that point, I'd say you land the interview, they send the panelists over, and most people start sweating. We've already built a profile, so we feel comfortable at this point. Do you think with the tools that we've provided that you'd have a much better feeling of confidence going into that interview door?
I don't see why you couldn't. It's everything. You can almost call it the shotgun method because it's so broad, but data is royalty. The more data you can procure and go in there knowledgeable, like from what I'm getting, you can really show you've done your research on the company. Hey, I saw you were profitable year over year. And oh, I see that you were shifting to cloud natives, and my job sat adjacent to that. And here's how I can help. I see it can help in so many different ways with the interview process.
No, one of the things that I didn't touch on as well is when you're collecting this information about individuals and such, you may see specific certifications that they've listed that can help you bridge that gap or that technical gap that you're going to see in these interviews. I wanted to touch on this specifically earlier in the OSINT, but I did remember this, and I've been on interviews where I've had this where you have a guy who has like the alphabet soup by their name, right? And you're like, oh Jesus, dude, what kind of questions is this guy going to throw at me? But then I've also had interviews where he's only had a handful of like a Linux certification or like a Graham certification, where I knew he was heavily inundated with forensics, right? Where I was like, all right, this guy's definitely got the forensics mindset. Don't try to fool him. Just be transparent in your answers and be completely honest what you know about forensics. We're getting ready to hand this over to the second half of the show. I feel like I've put way too much information into your mind at this point. Let's get back to the industry and get a better feeling of what the culture's like outside of what, me and JB's ecosphere. We've done a lot of researches on what's happening in the job cycles and the industry at large. Do you want to go ahead and jump on that, JB?
Yeah, so if you're at the point and you're just scoping out a dying company, job that's never going to be filled, let's go ahead and try to turn this around the other way. You've done all the framework, you've given them everything they needed to identify those two potential risks. And now we want to look at where the jobs actually are right now. And we're hopefully can correlate how that kit translates to these jobs. So this is what we found based on our data feeds. Everybody is talking about AI data center story as a cost story. So this is an interesting one. And there's a lot of focus in the news around the power bills going up, which that's impacting. I'm not trying to downplay
this is a huge debate in a lot of these major companies. You're seeing it in the news all the time, where the people are trying to ban data centers from being installed in their county lines. And this is in every state, JB. This one keeps coming up extremely prevalent in the news. Please tell us more.
Yeah, it's huge issue in Arizona, specifically around the water. We're in the desert, ain't got that much water. So that's the biggest issue out here. And it differs in every region what the reasoning is. But trying to flip that around, Goldman Sachs, they did research, and it was actually reported by Energy Now earlier this year. And the U.S. power sector needs about 500,000 workers by 2030. So yes, there's struggle with the data centers going into these communities, but there's also the jobs and employment that's going to follow behind all of that. To build out the grid, they need people that can work in transmission, people that can work in the manufacturing, the constructions, and the operations of all these systems that they're trying to put in place. So they're playing the infrastructure game. Those are jobs, and biggest power industry hiring in 50 years, but no one's calling it a job story for some reason.
Well, what's interesting about this data that you're reporting is I feel like for me, I when I hear about these data centers coming to my home state, the first thing I think of is employment and all the roles that are going to be produced. And I know me and you have actually discussed this because they're building a ton of data centers in Arizona currently. And I'm looking for jobs that are going to be posted that I could potentially do remotely. But what you've always said to me in the past is, man, that's 2 to 3 years out. They still have to build the actual underlying infrastructure to get those roles into people's hands.
Yep.
Go ahead, JB.
Yeah, and that's exactly directly at those transmission roles, manufacturing, construction roles, a lot of the skilled trades. That work is there, it's coming, and it's going to stick around. So that's a good thing. And then there's the extra wave, like you just identified, where the clients start going into the data center. All that has to be done. People managing and working, operating the data center. But there's another scenario for out in Wyoming, a magazine called Construction Owners. Earlier this year reported about they're going to need 1,600 workers at the peak of this build out for TerraPower's reactor. That's in, I apologize, I'm not sure if I'm going to pronounce this correctly, but it's Kimmerer, Wyoming. And I apologize for anybody from that city if I mispronounced it.
They're like rioting right now. They're banning our show. We're getting canceled right now because of that, JB. Thanks.
All right. That's the win for the week.
Go ahead, man.
But I mean, so they have their struggles with that coming in probably, but there's jobs that are following that can help support the communities. So what are the certs that are required? What is the education that's required? Is there something quick that you can upskill in to kind of land one of these? That's why we're reporting about this, and that's a pretty small town. So a town of a few thousand, it's an opportunity to make it a career instead of like the gig work that we talked about in previous episodes. The existing workforce also is, going to retire, right? People can't work forever. So that demand is also going to be there for filling all these roles. And, the trade labor analysts per BLS, 1 in 5 electricians is already 55 and older. Right. So they're peaking.
This doesn't surprise me at all, because I feel like all the people that I talk to that are electricians, I at one point I thought it was a dying breed.
Yep.
But now, like you're saying, with all this infrastructure, I feel like that is going to be one of the most sought after employments, is to be an electrician, because with the billions, I'm talking billions of dollars that are being forced into these infrastructures and these data centers, how would it not be?
And that's the mind blowing part, but it gets so buried in all the AI topics and obviously the controversies of deploying these data centers that require a certain type of electricity demand. There is that side of that story as well. And that's really what we want to put out there. And again, not trying to downplay the concerns of the communities at all. I understand that, but I hope there's ways the communities can work through that, and that these companies that are putting these data centers in there can see they need to be a part of the community and hear their concerns and figure out ways to integrate themselves without negative impact, and then still provide these jobs to the people that live in those areas.
The more I'm thinking about this, it's reminding me about the first half of the show and the kit that we were talking about, the boom of these jobs, right? You got these buildups that are screaming in public records months before the single job posts, like a single job, like we were just stating, right? So you have, that these companies are going to be building out these massive construction permit dockets. The Department of Energy is going to grant announcements. They got all these commission filings that are going to be coming into place. And then now it's like you could go in and you can actually start to get a pulse by using the Google Dorking strategy that we identified earlier, and just put in the site name, the company that's going to be hiring, the location where they're going to be putting it, and then also the roles that you think they're going to be hiring for. You could already have your resume built out. You could already know the windows when they're going to be hiring. You could already start to look up those events in those local communities. And dude, you're way ahead of the competition before they even announce the job. How awesome is that?
Yeah, and that framework works perfectly. So that example, TerraPower, that a reactor, all that build out, who are they building it for, all these data centers, look for TerraPower, work for this company and that, but use this framework and see where their job descriptions are landing in relation to your experience and training. And just understand that overall, that the demand, they want the jobs that people want to work. It's that training aspect. Energy department, per their employment data, they were seeing about 9 to 10 of these employers just aren't able to find qualified workers. And like you touched on earlier about the certs, find those certs, find a way to get them fast. Whatever you got to do, spend day and night knocking out a couple. Again, we have the 70-30 rule. Don't get all of them. So get some of them and get the ones that are quick wins or the high level certs that are going to get you that recognition by HR to get you in the door to land some of these jobs.
No, I love that. I absolutely love that, actually. Sometimes it's just a matter of getting your foot in the door, not your whole leg, not your whole body, just not letting them close the door and getting you into consideration. I'm seeing some of this data that we've been reporting. It's talking about young people not getting hired. And the reason I bring this up is because we were just talking about the other side of the paradigm where we have all these people leaving the workforce. But can you kind of expand on what it's like for some of the reported data that's talking about people coming into the workforce?
I touched on, I think, before, that it's the big AI boom and people losing jobs to that. And there's probably some validity to that. But for the younger groups out there, if they're just fresh graduates, still new, trying to get into the workforce, the New York Fed, they ran those numbers and they're feeling that AI isn't the reason for at least that group. Unemployment for recent grads, it went up. It went up to 3.6 in 2019, but this year it's up to 5.6. So unfortunate that that's growing for the unemployment in that group. Hopefully we can find ways to help bridge that gap with some of these frameworks and things that we're putting out there, trying to help people find ways to pivot and maybe find something that's adjacent. But that uptick, as you can see, it was 2019. That predates AI. That's why I wanted to call that out. So it wasn't AI that froze everything. I don't feel that's quite accurate. I think it's just a shift in certain people's roles with opportunity with the other roles going to be there in the future.
Well, what's interesting too is you start to see these brick and mortar jobs versus digital jobs that are going to be generated by AI, right? And so one of the things that's kind of revolving around in my mind is there are going to be these specific roles, like a perfect example, talking about electricians earlier. And I know I keep going back to this point, but I feel like for people that are in that career pivot where they don't know what they want to do, is you can start to look into this data and identify what jobs are going to be blowing up based off of this new infrastructure that's going to be supporting these specific roles, right? Or if you're a graduate in this particular case, and you're thinking, well, hey, I got a degree in liberal arts, and no hit on people that love liberal arts. I'm just saying, potentially, maybe you're at a pivot point where you don't know what to do, right? What you start to see is you start to Google dork some of this information out there and find out what those buzzwords are. And you start to see that there's a ton of roles that are being like projected, but nobody is filling, right? And I even where I'm at in my career, I'm like, man, there are a lot of roles that are coming up that never existed, or there's a whole bunch of roles that nobody wants to do that are high paying. Why am I not willing to want to take these positions? Like, do you feel like you're in that pool, JB?
Yeah, I mean, I guess so at times, not all the time. I don't know.
Well, no, we've talked before where you were like, hey, man, I'm thinking about completely changing the game from where I'm at and trying out some other potential.
It's difficult. It really is difficult. That's why I'm struggling even answering, because I'm like, it opens up so much, but there's nothing wrong with it. As a job seeker, use the OSINT, look at things where, hey, is this a remote entry level that got frozen out? Should I pivot somewhere else?
Which goes back to our earlier episode talking about frozen, right? It's not broken, it's just frozen right now.
Yeah.
And I think we need to reiterate that to the audience. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and always try the opposites. If you're entry level and you're seeing most of the remote is freezing you out, there's a lot of in-person roles. So why not try to flip that script and say, okay, I'll take the hit, I'll travel, what's my max travel range, try to find companies in that area, do the OSINT on them, see if they just have a requirement on site, and maybe that's your opportunity. So just don't get caught up in all these little areas.
No, absolutely. The salty dog in me, like, this is the old man get off my lawn kind of guy. That's like, well, hey, you're going out and you're searching, and all you want is a remote position because you don't want to leave your house, right? And sometimes what ends up happening is just changing that ticker from remote to hybrid opens up the doors to a lot more roles that could be locally filled. Or if you're not in a position where you have specific things holding you to a specific location, go to where the jobs are. This is the salty old man in me that's like, when I see people complaining about not being able to find work for months at a time or even years, I'm like, are you willing to do what it takes to get that role? Now, granted, who am I to say that? Because they may be dealing with this and the struggle is real, as we both know, because we've both been dealing with it. But at that same point, I'm like, are we doing enough? Or the people, they're saying they're doing it, but all they're doing is just applying to jobs that they know that they can't fill and saying they're done with it. Like, how do you feel about this?
I mean, honestly, after this episode, it's almost a knowledge issue. I didn't know about OSINT. So this is a great tool that I'm going to, again, like I said, I'm going to try this out myself. And those people you just described, if they can use a tool like this, it's going to make their lives better. And then having that moment of truth conversation with themselves, like, do I need to do a full pivot because maybe I'm just outdated with whatever it is?
Or maybe I'm not willing to make the changes.
Does happen.
Right. Absolutely. To your point. Yeah. And it might be as well as just maybe I'm not willing to make the changes. Maybe I'm not willing to get the certs. Maybe I'm not willing to put the reps in. Maybe I just think I'm better than I am and I'm not as good as I used to be. I hate to say that because it sounds horrible, but that sometimes is the truth for people.
Yep. 100% agree with that. So if you have a skill set that might be outdated, you can target companies that might still require that. So I can't remember it's an old technology from like 1980s that's still around. It's just mind blowing to me. Yeah. But there's companies that still have stuff like that out there. So if you're looking left, maybe you need to look a little bit more right. Say, oh, this is a company that doesn't really do a lot of changes. They're pretty static, bureaucratic. Maybe that's an opportunity to, again, use OSINT, target them, and get a job with them if they have anything open.
Well, and simple OSINT collection. One of the things I would say too is understanding who's hiring in the locations that you're looking for. So by just doing a quick search for the city and then a specific company name, I mean, just that basic OSINT, it would tell you, hey, we have this many roles. And if you start to do this over and over and over again, and you're starting to see that the companies that you want to work for have no positions in your location, your only option then at that point would be to pivot to remote work, specifically for different states that company will comply with, or potentially look at that pivot to another company or to another specific occupation. What do you think on that?
That's exactly what you're supposed to do. And we started this out talking about AI, and that's probably what people got stuck on. But this whole piece here it's not supposed to be focused on AI. It's supposed to let you know to work through all the news feeds, ignore AI, get through all that. The picture's just more mixed than the scariest headlines that they're posting out there. I mean, we're not saying AI isn't zero. We're not saying that. It's just not the villain. And just make sure we can leverage this framework to just keep your focus.
Well, I think too, like we've always stated from the gate when we created this show, is we wanted to create tools, frameworks, and things that will help people get better educated to understand the obstacles they're against, but also understand the overarching environment of what's out there, right?
Yep.
So the more tools we can provide people with, and the more confidence that we can build in them, I feel like their interviewing process, their job searching process will become muscle memory. And that's the goal, right? We want to make it so it's so completely comfortable that it's just, okay, I'm going to apply to 5 jobs today. Yep. I'm going to keep looking for those networks. I'm going to keep talking to people. I'm going to keep collecting OSINT on these companies and develop a profile that's going to make everything work more fluid, so it's routine and I'm not as scared anymore. What do you think?
Yep. And that kind of leads us into another area that we discovered sorting through all of our data. Mm-hmm. That's the last one that we're going to touch on. It's the school nurses. They're getting cut. They're closing all these different school areas. A lot of them reporting budget deficits. And for that community and those workers, what we're trying to explain here in this segment is you're not losing a career. That's what nobody's telling them on their way out when these cuts happen or the closures happen.
So what are they losing?
They're just losing a setting, the place that they worked at. So healthcare itself, as reported by nurse.org, 63% of all jobs of the country were added in January. And that growth is ambulatory, telehealth, and home health. So if you're in a small rural area and the budget got cut and you're a school nurse, telehealth, home health, things like that. So just know your options are open. And I get it. You don't want to lose a career. Getting laid off is not fun. Use OSINT. Use that as a way to find something like that in ambulatory or telehealth or home health, right? A school nurse already has their own outpatient clinic, essentially, right? That's really what they almost are, I think. They can chime in and let me know if I'm completely wrong, but that's what I feel
the
like.
Nurses are revolting.
Yeah. It's like strike 3 already today. Jeez.
Seriously, we're losing audience like segment by segment, Jamie. We're doing this wrong at this point. I think we need to improve the morale. Let's keep moving towards the positive stories, please.
The positive story is they have the skill set, and using OSINT is their ability to scope in the right place for them to work at wherever they live. That's what I was kind of into with. So positive note.
Always in the second segment, I feel like the first segment's an easy one for us because we're teaching you stuff you want to learn, right? Oh, this is awesome. And then in the second segment, we're like, all right, here's the thing. there are some ugly truths to the industry, but we don't want you to harp on those truths. We want you to use those to enable yourself to be more powerful in the job search, right, JB? Yep. That's what we're really shooting for here. I just want to touch back on that specifically with the nurses, right? That goes right back to the OSINT playbook where you're getting ahead of the game by understanding the actual market data and where to look, right? Again, I know I kind of touched on it again, and I'm going to keep touching on it, is that being ahead of the wave before the wave goes public, you can ride that wave all the way to the shore, as they say in surf talk, right? Now, granted, I'm from the West Coast, so go ahead and hate me or love me. I love the beach, so you're going to get a lot more of those, and they're going to keep coming.
Yeah, and just for clarity, I know we kind of went all these different stories, but stepping back, really it's just one story that spans the 3 industries. The demand is real. It is there. It's just not where the headlines are pointing, and hopefully we can help surface those opportunities through this podcast. 500,000 grid jobs nobody's calling a job story for some reason. Young grads are frozen out by remote, not robots. So look for on-prem, in-person roles, and nurses losing a setting, not a career. So just keep that focus. Like at the end of the day, got to have the paycheck. The public signal got there before the job board did. So just keep that in mind. Like those signals are happening before those job boards did. And OSINT is definitely going to support your ability to identify those as well ahead of time.
So I think, JB, I think we've hit on all the points, all the OSINT collection, all the industry data. Did you have anything else that you wanted to say before we closed out?
Just as a reminder, every source today, the names of everything, what it measures, they'll all be in the show notes for reference at thebrokenhandle.com. If you can subscribe or send people over to subscribe, we would definitely appreciate that. Leave a review of all the bad things that we did today, all the
definitely
things.
Let us know. We'd love to hear that.
And it definitely helps us, right? As Will started out the episode with some of the great feedback. Hopefully we're improved, but I'd like to sign it off from there. And Will, what's your last thoughts?
My last thought is rage applying. That seems to be like the major call out from last week. I had no idea that it would be so significant amongst our audience, but I feel like everybody was awakened by this beast that you unleashed in that episode, JB. So thanks for that. That definitely piqued some great interest. But yeah, man, I don't have anything else. I'm gonna go ahead and close it out. That's what we know.
What you do with it is up to you.
Quick legal. The Broken Handle hosts speak personally, not for any current or past employer. Guests share their own views. Their appearance is not an endorsement of their services or business. Commentary on companies, recruiters, and hiring practices is opinion. Nothing here, from hosts or guests, is career, legal, financial, or medical advice. Consult a licensed professional for those matters.